Hello friends. Uh, for the fifth semester, the paper fifth, that's the plant physiology and plant ecology. In that, you will have a concept of plant water relationship. So usually in that you will study the absorption, imbibation concept, diffusion, osmosis, and plasmolysis, and osmotic and water potential system of the plant. So usually the plant, all our plant are terrestrial plant, they will have a circulatory system. So usually they will get the water, mineral, nutrient through the roots, through the absorption. So usually whatever the plant absorb, that will be transport in the plant in unidirectional. The transport of the water and minerals through the xylem conducted in a plant in unidirectional, and whatever the food is synthesized, that will be in multi-directional ways. So usually the in case of the plant, the transportation by diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and the active transport mechanism will be occurs in case of the plant. So usually first one, what is a diffusion? So diffusion here, it is the slow momentum of the gas or the liquid or the solute from the higher concentration to the lower concentration region without the energy expenditure. So usually in case of the plant, the diffusion will occur in a simple manner just by a normal process. That means wherever the higher concentration of the water will be there, that will moving to the lower concentration region, through that diffusion will be takes place. The various factors will be affecting on the diffusion. What are those factors? The concentration gradient of the solute, permeability of the membrane, temperature, pressure, and density of the substances, and solubility of the liquid. So all these factors will be affecting on diffusion rate. So usually if the temperature and the pressure will be high, the transpiration or the diffusion will be more. So like that, there will be a correlation between the different factors of the environment to the diffusion. So usually in case of the plant, the simple water movement will be takes place, that's called as a plant water relationships. So usually water is called as a universal solvent because it is capable to dissolve all the substances. So in case of the plant, that's a protoplasm is a mainly consists of the water, and it is in dissolved and suspended form. So usually the majority of the plant consists of the water. If you take the watermelon, there are about 92% of water will be there. So like that, so usually the mature corn plant absorbs around 3 liter of water daily. So like that, the various plant will be absorbed, and through that they will be through the transpiration process, it will be get out from the plant. So there will be a perfect correlation between the plant water relationship. To study these concepts, so you have to be learn some of the concept or the definitions. First one is a water potential. What is a water potential? Potential of energy of the water, that is generally referred as a psi W. Usually it is defined as it is a measure of the ability of the water molecules to move freely in the solution. So usually this water potential is refer in case of the pascals, that's a PA. Usually this is a unit of representation of the water potential. So here water molecule have the kinetic energy. They may be move from the lower concentration to the higher concentration to the lower concentration region. The pure water have the high, usually the whatever the water potential will be there, that is 0. When the solute, this water potential will be negative, water potential will be in a solute. So usually if you take the water molecule, so usually the momentum of water molecule from the down gradient of the free energy is called as diffusion. So usually water potential of the pure water is 0, And when if you take the solution, so what happens, the magnitude of the water potential due to the dissolve of the solute, that is called as a osmotic potential, that represent as psi s. So usually the water potential of the pure water will be 0. When you take the solute, that time the osmotic potential, that is psi s, that is always a negative more than the solute molecules. So usually that's why the water potential is equal to the solute potential. That will be explained with the help of simple this what you are looking in a picture, through that experiment generally explaining. When the water enter to the plant cell, due to the diffusion, it causes the pressure against the cell wall, and it make the cell to turgid or the increases. The whatever the amount is increase through the water potential, that is called as a pressure potential, that is represented as psi p. So that's why the equation for the water potential is represented as psi w is equal to psi s plus psi p. Psi s is osmotic potential and psi w is the pressure potential. That's why the whatever the water potential, that is psi w, is equivalent to the that of psi s plus psi p. That's the water potential. The next concept is the osmosis. It is the spontaneous diffusion of the water across the differentially or semi-permeably membrane. So usually the plant consists of a membrane called tonoplast. Through that, usually the movement of the molecule will be takes place. Or sometimes the plant cell consists of the vacuole sap. Through that, the water potential will be, solute potential will be created. For example, if you take the solution A having the high water potential and high solute potential, and if the solute has a low water potential and the low solute potential, naturally what happens, the molecules are moved from the solution A to the solution B. That condition is called as a osmosis. So net direction and the rate of osmosis depend on the pressure gradient and the concentration gradient of the molecules. So water move from the region of higher channel of chemical potential to its region of lower chemical potential until the equilibrium is reached. When the two chamber is equal, then it will be water potential will be stop. So using this osmosis, usually we will study with the help of potato osmoscope experiment. So for that, so you have to be take two potato, and in the center you have to be peel it out, and you have to be placed in a sugar solution. So what happens, so one when first initially you have to be mark it out the point where actually the sugar solution inside the potato will be there. After some time, what happens, naturally the water level inside the sugar will be increases. Okay, because of that osmosis concentration that will be increasing. And another one simple experiment, that's a thistle funnel experiment, that is a semi permeable membrane of the egg cell. Through that, the water will be, or the higher concentration of the molecule will be takes place. Through that also usually study the osmosis. That is a simple another one experiment. The next concept is a plasmolysis. So what is a plasmolysis? So if you take the some cells, when the plasmolysis occurs, what happens, so usually the external solution balancing of the osmotic pressure of the cytoplasm, and then it is called as a isotonic. If the external solution is more dilute, higher water potential, then the cytoplasm is called as a hypotonic. That means the cell wall will be, in case of the hypotonic solution, the concentration will be less, and in the hypertonic solution what happens, then naturally the concentration will be more. So during that time what happens, the isotonic means it's the equilibrium. So what happens, when the plasmolysis takes place, the complete water is oozed out from the cell. That time what happens, the cells became the flaccid. Again, the plasmolysis takes place. What happens? The water will be re-enter. So that time the cell will be become turgid and occur the normal state. So during the plasmolysis condition. So just by looking at these diagrams, so you can verify first A is a plasmolyzer cell. That means the during that condition what happens, the complete cell sap will be flaccid condition, the water will be oozed out, and when the water is inside then it is become the turgid. So for example, best example for the plasmolysis, so you have to be take the cell and put it in a water condition. So initially the turgid condition will be present and it exposed to the sunlight, completely transpiration occurs. The what happens again, the plasmolyzed, the complete cell became the what happens, flaccid condition will occurs. The next concept is to imbibation. Imbibation is nothing but the simple diffusion of the water molecules are absorbed by the cells or the plant. So usually what happens, if you take the grapes, completely dry grapes, if you put in a water, what happens after a few time, it will be get bulged. What happens here, that there is a simple transfer of the molecule occurs, that is due to the imbibation pressure. Even the seeds you soaked in a water, what happens, simply the imbibation will be occurs. Okay, the first one is diffusion, osmosis, osmotic potential, plasmolysis, and the imbibation. So all these concepts, through the mechanism, the water will be transport in the plant. Just like there will be a correlation between the plant and the water. Sometime due to the osmosis, the plant molecule, water molecule will be takes place in a plant, or due to the plasmolysis, or due to the imbibation, the water molecule which takes place. But the water potential is always equivalent to the psi P is equal to psi S plus psi W is equal to psi S plus psi P. So this is the water relationship between the plant and the water relationship. Okay, so usually various mechanism you will study for the plant water relationship. What are those active absorption and the passive absorption mechanism will be takes place. So if the plant has to, in case of the plant, water has to transfer for the long distance, during that time they require the active molecules. So this is how the absorption of the molecules in a plant through the first, usually root hairs will be absorbed, and that's a apoplastic mechanism, and the symplastic mechanism will be takes place during the transportation of the plant in the water. So usually in case of the apoplast, what happens, just outer epidermal cells, what happens, the water molecule transfer to the cortex, and that is transferred to the endodermis, and the pericycle, through that xylem will be conducting the water initially, and in a symplastic manner, so a little bit modified in case of the plant water conduction or the transportation. So this diagram will explain the simply how actually the absorption of the water takes place in the plant will be explained. Some of the long plants, just like pinus or the long coniferous, they have to be need absorb the water from the root to the top. But normally small herbaceous, they did not, or even sometimes aquatic water, aquatic plant does not need the water transportation. So like that, the complete the water molecules will be through the active absorption mechanism will be takes place in case of the plant to conduct the water from the root to the shoot or the leaves. So it is a usually unidirectional mechanism. So usually important of the different factor I already told to effect on a osmotic relation of the plant. What are the factors, that is temperature, concentration, solubility, diffusion pressure, density gradient will be affecting. So like that, the osmosis also will be affected with the some environmental factors in a plant. That's especially the osmotic concentration of the solute particle, temperature, ionization, light, the position of the tissues, hydration of the solute molecule. All these factors will be affecting on the osmotic pressure. But due to the water potential,